So let's actually jump right into our introductions. And so everyone already shared their cities, but in the chat, let's actually share, if you haven't already, your name, your city, and what is a fond memory you have from Eid. And so it's going to be an exciting check-in question. And I know there's a lot of really nice memories when we think about Eid. And so it could be a current one, it could be one from your childhood, it could be both, something that you do with your family. Whatever it is, share it in the chat. And so in the meantime, I think I could share mine. I think mine is that my mom, every Eid, like the night before, she does this dish. It's an Egyptian dish, like where I'm from. It's called Ali, and I don't even know how to explain it. It's like layers of dough, but it's sweet. And so it's just a tradition that from when I was young, we would always like, and it needs like the night before to get prepared. And by the morning, it'd be ready. So right before we'd go to Salat al-Eid, we'd actually take a bite, come back from Salat al-Eid, and just like devour the rest of the tray. But I'm seeing some memories coming in the chat. So I love Eid prayers and how peaceful and joyful it feels. Definitely. Yep. Layers of puff pastry. I'm telling you, it is absolutely amazing. Getting to wear Eid pajamas, possible conference. So I really don't have an Eid memory yet, but looking forward to creating some. Definitely. You're surrounded by a community that shares Eid memories and would love to share them with you, inshallah. More coming in, sneaking a look at the toy hidden in the closet the night before, visiting family and friends. Eid is incomplete without Krispy Kreme donuts available at every Eid Salah. I wish just Krispy Kreme just opened near our location in Staten Island, New York City. So excited for that. But keep dropping them in the chat. Keep sharing where you're coming from and your favorite Eid memory. I don't have an Eid memory, I'm Greek Orthodox, but I'm here to offer my support for my Eid holiday. Definitely, we appreciate the support wherever you're coming from, whichever background you're here with. We appreciate the support, especially as we're making this a movement, a collective movement. We're all going to be doing this together, and we need that collectiveness, inshallah. Annual Eid brunch with my family. Nice. Okay. Going to the masjid. Let's see everyone dressed up. My family's tradition is coordinated outfits. Coordinated outfits is hard to pull off, but that's really great that you're able to do it. I think with that, we're going to continue sharing it in the chats, inshallah, and then we'll be moving on to our next segment where a fellow Empower field organizer, Cynthia, is going to be joining me as we talk about Eid for All, what's at stake, and what really this campaign is all about.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, everybody. Welcome again, and thank you so much for joining us this afternoon, evening, wherever you may be for the interest meeting on Eid for All. So we really want to get straight down to business. Like, what are we here for, and why is this such an important campaign? So what's at stake? Our main thing that we want you to take away from this campaign is that there's students who have to choose between their education and their religion on Eid. And we need to really address this problem by coming up with a collective plan so that students don't have to make this choice. So we want to facilitate this process, make it easy for all of our variety of communities. You guys dropped all these different places you all are from. We want to make sure that this campaign is replicable in your locality. We want to make sure that we can empower existing local organizations, know that you have the tools, resources, and people you need to make this a possibility for you and your community. And because it's been done before, we hope that through this experience you get hope and you get to see some successful campaigns as well and see why it's important.
Yeah, definitely. Just like what Cynthia is saying, like when we really look at the Eid for All campaign, like a lot of other campaigns, but specifically with this, we have a lot of support and collectiveness, like I mentioned in the beginning, is really important about this campaign, is that we're able to do this together nationwide, and making this a collective movement is really important, but also understanding that in each of your local areas, each of your local communities, things are going to be looking a little bit different. But like Cynthia mentioned, the most important part about Eid for All is that students should not have to make that decision between either going to school or spending Eid with their family, which is also religious, which also has religious backing. And so with that, let's get into the next slide with focusing a little bit more about what's at stake here today and about why are we here today. And like what me and Cynthia mentioned, hundreds of thousands of Muslim students have to make a choice between either practicing their religion and observing Eid and then missing out on school, or attending school and missing out on celebrating Eid. And what we're here saying is that students should not have to make that tough decision, and we're here to mobilize. And so when we think about mobilizing, our vision is for Muslim students, families, communities across the country to advocate for Eid as a school holiday. Even when you research Eid as a school holiday, you'll see that it's really a minimal amount of campaigns that we're actually able to get it through, but we know it's successful. But by us coming here together, we're doing this as a collective effort, knowing that we're going to be able to empower each other, just like Empower Change. We're going to be able to empower each other to get this campaign going in each of our cities and in each of our localities. And so with that, let's actually jump right into our panel discussion. We're joined by esteemed panelists, Linda Sarsour, which is the executive director of Empower Change, coming with us from New York, Sister Salima Saswell from Pennsylvania, Sister Noor Bahussan from San Francisco, and Brother Asad Gilani from New Jersey. And we're actually so happy to have you guys all join us here today on this amazing campaign. And so we have a set of questions. We're going to jump right in just because we know how important this campaign is and everyone's excited. And so let's start off with actually Sister Linda. Can you tell us briefly about your campaign, how it started, and who was it led by, and how long did it actually take for this campaign to kick off in New York? Do you hear us still, Linda?
I do.
Perfect.
Do you all see me, folks?
Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah, because I don't see me, but I hope that you see me. But I see Abdullah's beautiful face. Salaam alaikum, everyone. As you probably can tell by my posture, I'm always trying to do 16 things at one time, but I thought it was important to be here with all of you today. Just wanted to quickly say how excited I am about what's to come. As you know, I was one of the leaders of the Coalition for Muslim School Holidays in New York. New York now is the largest school system in the country. It has over 1.1 million students and over 100,000 schools, where we have, not 100,000 schools, over 100,000 Muslim students in our public school system who are now recognized. And as well, as you know, our schools are closed on Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha, depending on whether it falls on a school day or not. I think the really most important things I wanted to kind of bring here, and I know some of the other panelists will share with you all, is like the things that really helped us make our campaign successful, is that it brought people from across the Muslim community. I mean, this was one of those types of campaigns that was very empowering. It didn't matter if you were, African-American Muslim from Brooklyn, or you were, Turkish Muslim, or you were South Asian Muslim from Queens. It across race, across sects of Islam. So we had beautiful collaboration between Sunni, Shias, Muslims as well, and really came together to put this campaign. And it really was led by also the parents, mostly mothers of public school students, and of course, young students, many of whom were middle school and high school age at the time of our campaign, helping us to gather petition signatures across the city of New York. Our campaign couldn't be ignored because of the amount of power that we were able to amass in such a short period of time. One of the things that came up in our campaign that's going to come up here, and Ishraq is going to share a little bit more about this with all of you, because one of the biggest questions that people always have is, how did you all agree when the Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha are? And we, in fact, were able to help set some precedent, where we were able to hire a Muslim astronomer who also has, Islamic knowledge, who helped put together a calendar for the next 25 years that we used, and that was endorsed by our Majlis Shura. The other thing that made our campaign very successful is getting support from our civil liberties union here, our labor organizations, the teachers union, the principals union here had our back, and they were ready to support us and be on the front lines to ensure that our Muslim students were recognized and included in our public school system. And so I want you to know that this campaign, as you think about setting on the path to do this in your community, it's truly an inspiring campaign. It's intergenerational. It brings our people together. And guess what? It's Ramadan, folks. It's coming up. when's the best time to organize our people and talk to people? During a time when the Muslims are already in spaces together. So at iftars, in your masajid, during, after, not during Tarawih, because I'll get in trouble by imams. I didn't mean during, I mean before Tarawih, after Tarawih, being able to be in spaces where there are already a lot of Muslims, I think it's an opportune time. So that's one of the reasons why we did this now, because we know that we're coming up on a time when our community's together and a time where we can organize our people together. You know, we learned a lot of lessons in New York, and I'm sure other people will learn those lessons, where tell you about the lessons they learned. You know, we learned a lot of things the hard way. So you don't have to do the things the hard way. We have templates for people, and we learned a lot about the power that we have as a community. Oftentimes we say to ourselves, like, do we really have the power to do this? And I want to let you know, I promise you that you do. And I think that we are here at Empower Change, and our friends who you'll hear from other cities here at your disposal, because just like we were able to win in some in our cities, you know, of course, there are some people that are still in the process of their campaign that are hopefully going to win soon. But for those of us who have won, we want to see you win too. And so inshallah, this is just the beginning for all of us. So I appreciate you all for being here today. And I look forward to working with all of you so much closer, inshallah, in the coming weeks and months.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sister Linda. And thank you for actually hitting on all three of our questions today.
I follow instructions, Abdullah. Whatever you tell me to do, I do.
No, it was absolutely perfect. And thank you for getting us into what's happening in New York, what happened in New York, and what we can take away from it from lessons learned.
Ishraq, if you can drop eidinnyc.org, just so people have that as well, that would be great, just so they can have something to look at.
Definitely, folks, keep an eye out for that coming in the chat. Perfect. Just came into the chat, eidinNewYorkCity.org, from what Sister Linda was talking about. To keep the conversation going, inshallah, let's actually jump into our next panelist, Sister Salima, joining us from Pennsylvania. Can we actually touch on those three questions? The slide is going to come right back. And just quickly for everyone joining us, the three questions are: tell us briefly about your campaign, how it started, who was it led by, how long did it take, what is something that you would like to highlight about your campaign that worked really well that others can learn to take on, and finally, what is a lesson learned that you would like to remind other organizers to look out for? Sister Salima.
Wow, so tough job following up Sister Linda. I hope she hit on a lot of the points that I would hit on. But just to start again, assalamu alaikum. My name is Salima Sasba. I am from Pennsylvania, born and raised Philadelphian. So to touch briefly on how the campaign started, literally it was myself and some other leaders in a room with some of our Muslim elected leaders. We had, recognized the power in the fact that we were electing various leaders that were Muslim in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, particularly in Philadelphia. And we wanted to sort of empower the community and hold those elected leaders accountable, that we supported. So we all got together in a room and said, here are our top priorities. How will we attack these things? And there were a number of things that we wanted to do. Eid holidays was a really popular topic, but we also talked about getting more elected leaders who are Muslim, halal in schools and prisons and hospitals and other things like that. But the Eid holiday was something that we all agreed upon, and it was really our very first initiative. So we formed what we called the Philadelphia Eid Coalition. And this coalition was made up of elected leaders, community leaders, imams, masajid, unions as well, and teachers and parents and students. And it was really going into the next question. What I'd like to highlight about our campaign is I think that the grassroots organization is what really made it possible to do the work that we did. I mean, we got together as a coalition. We built the coalition, and there were Muslims from all walks of life, from all walks of life across the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, concentrated in Philadelphia, who worked together. We built a website. It was very important that we had presence, on social media. We had a website. We also capitalized on convenings, large convenings of Muslims, whether it be Juma or Eid. we would give out flyers and palm cards, and there would be a code. Text this number, you can join our database, and that's how we communicated to everyone, and really grew this big coalition. We did petitions as well that were helpful to give to the school district, and ultimately it was really leaning on those Muslim elected officials who worked with the mayor, who partnered with the superintendent of Philadelphia schools to recognize and adopt a resolution from City Hall, and also, this rule change to allow for the Eid holidays to be on the academic calendar in Philadelphia, which is the largest county in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And so it took about 1 year, I would say, of campaigning with the Philadelphia E-Coalition. And again, we were at events. We held a huge rally. We had Imam Siraj and Sister Linda come to Philadelphia and speak about what their practices were in New York. And I mean, we had over 800 individuals attend this rally. So it was grassroots organization, community building, and just working with Muslims. I always say that Islam hosts the most diverse group of the most diverse group of followers than any other religion. We have Muslims in Philadelphia from all walks of life, and that really led to our progress here in Philadelphia. And then what I'd like to say is a lesson learned, um, that I would like to remind other organizers about is paying attention to any internal barriers that you might have to preclude you from having success. We when we first got together, there was a gentleman who is now a senator in Pennsylvania. His name is Senator Sharif Street. At the time, he wasn't a senator. And this is again back in 2015. His father was the former mayor of Philadelphia. And so when we were having this meeting, he said, well, my father wanted to place the Eid holidays on the public school calendars long ago, when he was mayor, but the imams couldn't agree on the sighting of the moon and when each should be had, and a date. And so we had to educate the imams on the process of how the Philadelphia school district really sets their calendar 2 years in advance. And we really did rely on our Majlis Shura and other Muslim scholars to calculate a 5-year calendar of dates, which that was the hardest, probably, obstacle. The toughest obstacle in our entire campaign is getting the imams and the majlis to agree upon how the dates would roll out. And once we were able to do that, it was smooth sailing. At this time, I'm happy to say that not only Philadelphia has both Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha on the academic calendars, which we had to do some fighting for Eid al-Adha because it hadn't been falling within the academic school year, and next year it actually does. So it's important to say that we got the Eid holidays recognized back in 2016. It took us a year from 2015 to 2016. It was announced, and then it's something that we continue to lobby for every 2 years when the calendars are agreed upon. But what I'd like to say is there are now 15 other school districts and counties in Pennsylvania that have adopted the Eid holiday on their calendars, which is outstanding, because just in 2016, it was only Philadelphia. Now, to date, there are literally 15 other school districts, 16 in total, that have Eid holiday recognized on their school calendars. So I'm really, really proud of that. And again, I want to make it clear that it's not always permanent when they put the Eid holiday on the calendar. We found that in Philadelphia, we had to continue to advocate for the Eid holiday every time that calendar was up for renegotiation every 2 years. So pay attention to that, but also, the same thing applies. Apply the same pressure as you do throughout your campaign, and inshallah, you'll have success.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sister Salima. Once again, Sister Salima is joining us, talking about the campaign in Pennsylvania. And Mabruk, congratulations for the additional school districts that were able to get Eid in their school calendars. And so with that, inshallah, we'll go to Sister Noor, joining us from San Francisco, inshallah, discussing the same questions.
Hi everyone, my name is Noor and I'm the youth organizer with Iraq, the Arab Resource and Organizing Center. And yeah, I'm gonna talk about our Eid campaign, how it started and where we are right now. It's we don't have it officially recognized because we have faced backlash, but I want to address what we learned and what people can take from our Eid campaign and our experience with having the Eid campaign in San Francisco. So yeah, I'll go into how it started. So the campaign itself was initiated by Arab students at Wallenberg High School, who started a petition to have Eid as a holiday. And in 2022, so last year, the SF Board of Education voted to recognize Eid as an official school holiday. So we won. It was a historic win. People were very excited, and especially our community members. And that came after, months and months of organizing families into board meetings and having the youth show up at Board of Education meetings to actually force the board to say yes to having Eid as an official holiday. However, after that, after they did recognize it as an official school holiday, they got a threat. They got threatened with a lawsuit. If some of you have been following the news of what's happening, so they got threatened with a lawsuit and they backed on their decision. So they reversed their decision to implement Eid, and that was, that was a loss. And people were confused. Our community members, the parents were like, "What happened? They promised us something, and then how can they do that? That's not okay." And what we did then, we were communicating with making sure we, deliver these updates to our community members, and we worked on a strategy to actually continue to mobilize to Board of Ed meetings. So this campaign took 3 years, and it's still an ongoing campaign. And something that we did at our last meeting was we mobilized everyone under the sun. So even moderates and people that we don't necessarily align with on every single issue in the movement, we were able to mobilize, including our allies. And at the last meeting, over 100 students, and families from across the city and elected officials, interfaith and labor leaders, civil rights lawyers, and advocates turned out to Tuesday's meeting, like last Tuesday, which was 2 days ago. And they all came to the Board of Ed meeting, and that was really powerful because we forced the board to actually talk about it at their meeting. They were not even gonna talk about it. Like the backlash that our community faced was very, racist and Islamophobic. Not only did they cave to racist and right-wing pressure, because, the lawsuit was coming from people like right-wing people and Islamophobic people who didn't want Eid to be implemented in San Francisco, and people who were against public education. So these are the kind of people we are against, and we understood that we are up against these people. And on Tuesday's meeting, we actually forced them to move spring break to where Eid is for the upcoming school year. And without, without the public pressure and without community power, we wouldn't have been able to do that. And they wouldn't even have mentioned our resolution, and that it was put on hold because they weren't even gonna discuss that in public, but we forced them to. And so I think one lesson learned is holding holding board members accountable to us is very important, because they should be accountable to us. These board members are elected by the community. And one thing that worked really well was using a multi-strategy campaign. So we didn't just focus on one strategy. Like we actually worked with the Arab American Anti-Discrimination Committee to threaten the district with a lawsuit, you know, if they don't go forward with the Eid resolution. So we kind of like used their own language to pressure them. We threatened them with a lawsuit because they did violate our constitutional rights. And we also used public pressure. So over 100 organizations across the US signed onto a letter, and we had over 2,000 individuals sent emails to the Board of Ed. And we also worked with the union, the teachers union. So that was really important because they hold so much power in the district, and they negotiate the calendar with board members. So we got them on our side and they supported us. And we also held a press conference and rally. So that was also really important to do, you know, to make our voices loud and heard in the city.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sister Noor. And just for all our attendees, it's also like really important to note that just as you heard from Sister Noor, Sister Salima, and even Sister Linda, like each campaign is going to look maybe even completely different from the other. One might have to advocate to school boards. Others could be assembly members or senators or state senators. So each of your campaigns is going to look different. You're also going to be facing different challenges. But what we're doing here today, we're trying to collectively work under the same mission of getting Eid and school holidays, while also still recognizing that it's going to look different. But let's also learn from one another, from our best practices, but also on these specific lessons learned from each of these amazing organizers that are joining us today. And so next, since we're talking about amazing organizers, we have Brother Asad here with us, joining us from New Jersey. And so Brother Asad, right back to those 3 questions, inshallah, go for it.
Yeah, well, first up, I wanted to thank Empower Change for the opportunity for giving me to speak to all of these people that are looking to highlight Eid in their own counties, and salam to all of you guys. And I wanted to start talking about our campaign and how my organization kind of ran our campaign to success and all that kind of stuff. So essentially, the campaigns that we focus on under my organization, which is Muslim Students for Justice, is we're a policy-based organization. So the end goal is to pass student benefiting policy in the neighboring areas and eventually expand bigger and bigger. And policies such as Eid, halal foods in cafeterias, anti-bullying policy, stuff like that. That's basically what we strive to do. So to zoom in on the Eid policies that we have passed in the past, I know that a lot of people, it takes a longer time, a lot of people takes a shorter time. For us, all of our campaigns vary a lot. Basically, the first Muslim benefiting campaign that our board passed was Eid holiday. That took us about 4 or 5 years. I honestly hopped on that campaign a little bit later. After that policy, other policies we passed, like halal foods and stuff like that, they've been very quick to pass within 2 weeks. But it is important to note that if your board has never passed a policy of that stature benefiting the Muslim students before, it's going to be a lot harder to do. So the Paramus campaign, which is a campaign at my high school, was initially led by the Council of American Islamic Relations, the New Jersey chapter. So they're also kind of similar. They're policy-based and they help pass Eid in those areas. And I hopped on it towards the latter end of it when I found my organization. And then from there, you know, we kind of expedited it pretty quickly and we got it passed. So I think the way that we got it passed, like I said before, the way that, you know, CARE, which is the acronym for them, was doing it before, is they were having a lot of one-on-one meetings with their legal team and with the board president and the board people. But we knew that because it was a student benefiting policy, A, it was essential that we had actual students in the mix, and B, it was important that we would show up in large groups of numbers. Often, more times or not, the biggest issue with Eid is that, you know, every single year the board will shift their calendar as long as it falls within the 180 to 181 day mark. But they're just going to shift it to what they think is best appropriate. And in a lot of places, the Muslim population is very small. So that, or at least statistically. So that said, they see that statistic of 1% to 10%, they immediately just cancel it out. So in doing that, we knew that we needed to be more than a statistic and we needed to be heard. So in doing that, in the next board meeting, and this was the board meeting that we got it passed, we knew that we were done having one-on-one conversations with the board. We wanted to have them hear all of our Muslim people. So we got about anywhere from like 50 to 150 Muslim people and non-Muslims show up to the board of that meeting and talk about why they believe they should have Eid off, the issues that they faced. And after the board saw that we were more than a statistic of 1 to 10%, after they saw how many people were being affected by it, anywhere from elementary to high school, people that were even non-Muslims, we had a lot of Christian people come in saying they would feel left out if their holiday wasn't represented. We had a lot of Jewish students come in and say the same thing. Having those different sides come in is essentially what helped us in the long run in passing it. So it wasn't having those one-on-one meetings with the board, but it was having the students speak, having the parents speak, having a large group of people speak. And we did a lot of publicizing of that meeting as well to make sure a lot of our families joined in. Something that I think was important to highlight about the campaign, and like this question says, what worked well for us. Like I said, I think the most important thing is you have to anticipate what people and what the board is going to say, and you have to have a plan to counteract that. A lot of the times, a lot of people get so caught up in the passion, the way in which they really want this so bad that they forget, they anticipate that the people that they're speaking to, they're honestly not going to be necessarily sympathetic to it because they've never experienced Eid. They've never experienced what this is. So going into it, we already had an action plan of, we know we have to take a day off and we know you guys need 180 to 181 days. And we knew right off the bat, they would hit us with the statistic question, which is why we brought all of those families in. This isn't the Eid policy, but this is a little bit different. When we passed halal foods in the school district as well, we anticipated that the biggest thing they would say is that they can't do it because halal foods cost more money. So we came prepared with a bunch of grants and government official grants for our county that subsidize costs for halal and kosher foods. So once again, in that case, it goes for Eid as well. It's good to have your people go and speak, but it's also important. And that's a lesson that we learned throughout, now that we've passed policy in neighboring districts, that you need to have, in this case, the biggest pushback you're going to have is that there's too little people, the population is not big enough. So I think that was the main lesson that we learned going into the second policy that we passed, which was in Fairlawn, a neighboring town. When we passed Eid in there, which was only a few weeks ago, that school district's actually a lot bigger. Its Paramus was 3,500 kids, Fairlawn was 5,000. And they had, I think, almost the same or a little bit less of a Muslim population. Right off the bat, the first meeting, we didn't have any one-on-one meetings with the board. We just showed up in full force, 50 Muslim families. We had a bunch of people speak in public comment. That day, at the end of that meeting, it was passed. There was no further meetings. They passed it right away. They had an Easter Monday that was attached to an Easter break. Within that moment, they just switched the Easter Monday to Eid al-Fitr. So I think now we know, and now it's clear that even though it's almost a less formal way to just have people come unannounced and speak during public comment, that puts pressure on those officials as well to see. So I think that's essentially that's the best tactic as to going about passing policy.
Thank you so much, Asad. And just for everyone here, Asad is actually a high school senior, which is just absolutely amazing. So great job, Asad. Keep doing what you're doing in New Jersey, which isn't actually too far from where I am. I'm from Staten Island, and so people just group us together eventually. But I'm hearing a few common themes, few great common themes, actually. One is really just strengthen numbers from our community, is that our community is really our base, is connecting our people together, organizing from within is some of the most important steps to take. Next is also like identifying allies. We know that we can't just do this on our own. And so bringing in people that also want to support this campaign, just like so many people that are here with us on this call today. And so we appreciate the allies that are joining us today, and we know how important they are in making this campaign successful. Also, just really looking and identifying like the various targets and telling a story and making sure that that's exactly what we're doing. We're telling a story. When a young person is talking about how they're affected by not going to school and having to spend Eid with their family while also missing out on coursework, that's something that school board members, city assembly members are actually able to hear, because these are stories that they can relate to some level where they can imagine their children missing out. And so making that story relatable, taking that campaign on social media, taking it through the multi-strategies that were mentioned is absolutely amazing. And finally, just being persistent is absolutely important to this discussion. And so I once again want to thank all our panelists, Asad, Noor, Salima, and Sister Linda. But right after this panel discussion, we're actually going to be jumping in right now into our toolkit, which is really exciting. And this toolkit, like I mentioned, which is also going to be shared with everyone here today, actually breaks down some common steps that everyone here can take in making Eid a school holiday in your district. So I'm actually going to bring in our organizing director here at Empower, Ishraq, to tag team with me on this as we talk about this toolkit and how you all can use it in your own cities.
Hey, assalamu alaikum, folks. Jazakallah khair for coming on board. And I really am appreciative and thankful that, Salima, Noor, Asad, and Linda, who was on, was able to share some insight. I also know there are some attendees in the crowd that are putting in the work. I know Aya mentioned that they're doing a campaign in Washington State. And we have Dr. Uzma, who's been just knocking out districts in Long Island. And we're really excited to work with her down the line, because I think she has a lot of insight to bring. What we just wanted to do with this toolkit, as Abdullah, I dropped the link in the chat, and Abdullah is sharing the screen, or Cynthia sharing the screen, is kind of share some of the best practices. We, Empower Change, we're an organizing outfit. What we know how to do is we know what are good organizing tactics, and we know that there's certain campaigns that can fit that mold very easily, and we want to be able to steward and support folks that are running campaigns on the ground by, if they need a sounding board, if they need some support on best practices, that's what we're here for. So we just put together a toolkit that has a few things. I don't know if we're going to necessarily jump in detail, because I know Salima, Noor, Asad, folks had just talked about some of the tactics that they used. So, we have a little bit of a background here on, why we think this campaign is useful. Again, this helps kind of build a consistent narrative across the country of why we think that, folks should be involved in doing this Eid for All campaign, and sharing some of the wins and examples, and some of them which were mentioned on this call today. Scrolling down a little bit around strategy and logistics, it's very basic questions. And I don't know, Abdullah, if you want to kind of go through it. As an organizer, as our team, we always ask this, very basic. Where will I be organizing? What district is it? What city? And that helps us start honing in, who am I targeting in terms of who are the people that I need to move in order to get this win around? And with whom will I be organizing with? Who's my base? Who are the students that I'm going to be tapping into? Who are the parents? Who are the other stakeholders? Who are the other allies that may not be a part of the district? One thing that we know from the organizing side of it, we want to prioritize, people that are going to be directly impacted by the decision. So if you're targeting a certain district, who better than the students and the parents and the community members that are paying taxes, that are actually a part of that school district to lead that campaign? And then what resources do we need to make this campaign successful? I know there's a big, Asad had mentioned this, about what percentage of students are actually part of a district. Making sure that we're taking stock of how many parents there are doing this, that, the other. And something that Asad really mentioned, which is such a core organizing tactic, anticipating what the opposition is going to say. I know they're going to ask me, what the numbers are. I know they expect 180 days of school. So how are we going to accommodate this? So if you can put yourself in the shoes of the opposition and have answers for that and are prepared to organize through it, then your campaign will be successful. So we've broken down some of these steps that are broad, but we figured that they would be intuitive. Abdullah, I'll let you take it away and kind of highlight any of these other steps as we continue to go through the toolkit.
Yeah, definitely. And just as you were saying, step one is really knowing your base, knowing how many Muslims are affiliated within your district, how many Muslim students are there in the district, how many organizations serve Muslims. Really knowing your district is the most important thing, because imagine showing up to a community board meeting or a school board meeting and not knowing your own numbers. And that's the fastest way to have your campaign just end right then and there. But if you're able to come in and say, here are my people. I know how many people are in your school districts. These are technically your constituents. And so they have to answer on behalf of them. And so that's one of the most powerful things, is knowing your numbers. The next is really researching and identifying your target. Like we mentioned throughout this campaign, it's not always going to be the school board. Sometimes it could be the school board, it could be the chancellor, a superintendent. Sometimes it could be a state assembly if you're passing this on a state level. Figure out if it's a city council, but really knowing who you're going to be targeting is really important, because you need to address them in that way in specific, because if you're going to be getting those numbers for those specific district, you need to know who represents them. because that's the person that would most likely be the one to make a decision either for or against Eid and school holidays. And so the next thing is, and it's one of the most important pieces in any campaign, is really just taking action, is translating all of that research, all of that steps that you take in the back, like in the back end, take it out in person or online, however you're going to be organizing this campaign. So identifying the tactic, collecting petition signatures, just like Aya is doing through the change.org, attending school board meetings with community board members, and really getting local press coverage is really important. And even at the end of this toolkit, we actually give suggestions to how you could, to some language that you could use on social media or even with press when you want to talk about this campaign. And so quickly running into the fourth and fifth step, the fourth one is really creating a campaign timeline. You don't want to seem, especially when you're talking about your target, you don't want to seem like you don't know what you're doing. And so at least just setting out some kind of campaign timeline is going to be really important, is finding out when do you want to go public with this campaign? When do you want to start collecting signatures and comments in favor of your campaign? And then finally, when do you want the decision to be made for this campaign to go into effect? And that's just really helpful internally and externally when you're talking about this campaign to people that you're, for example, you're able to say, this is the school board meeting that we plan to show up on. This is the school board meeting that we hope for this to be passed. It's just helpful for everyone that's involved in the campaign. And then finally, just evaluating what's working and what needs to be changed to get to your goal. And actually what we're doing here today is a little bit of part of that when we're talking about lessons learned for some campaigns that are going on, some campaigns that have already passed and have been successful or haven't fully been successful. It's important to take those lessons learned and apply them to your campaign, just so we're not going through the same mistakes as other organizers already have. These mistakes are actually just uplifting one another. And so the campaign timeline template, I'll actually pass it to Ishraq really quick and some resources.
Yeah, so and as folks may be guessing on this call, and I imagine there's folks that have some sort of organizing experience, we try breaking this down as many steps as possible that makes it tangible and measurable for us in terms of our goals. So we provided, I think if the a sheet is popping up, a campaign strategy template. So part of that is, articulating what that goal is. Do we want Eid as a holiday? Do we want it as a parent-teacher conference day? Do we want this goal as establishing Eid based on calculations or moon sighting? So being sure internally, and I think Salima mentioned this as well, taking stock of any potential internal barriers. So again, we're providing some of these templates and ways to kind of think about as you're launching and looking for support on the campaign. And then really breaking down and spelling out who is your base, who are your allies, who is your opponent, that you are anticipating some sort of resistance from. I think San Francisco is in a very unique, unfortunate situation that there is a strong Islamophobic element there, but I believe like AROC and the team, as we're looking to support them as well as the nationally organization is supporting them, they've identified that there's an opponent there that wanted to reverse this, and how do we kind of understand how to push forward, but think of what tactic would like block that individual and then kind of make sure that we go towards our primary goal. And then thinking about our targets are always going to be the folks that make that decision, or the body that's going to make the decision to make sure that you get that win. So again, we really encourage folks to think very strategically and tactically about as you're applying, looking to execute a campaign. Some of the resources shared, of course, y'all may already guess that Empower Change is very New York centric. We have Abdullah, our all-star organizer at Staten Island, and then Linda, of course, is in New York, and Cynthia's in the East Coast. And I always lump all the East Coast as New York centric. I'm one of the lone wolves of Empower out on the West Coast. But we have some resources from New York City that we can help to really frame the narrative and explain like how Eid can be like to provide folks an Eid 101, particularly for educators or to win over allies within the district. This document that we're going through is actually going to be a living document, meaning that it's a Google document that we'll be sharing and updating with putting in updates, additional resources as we continue to talk to other districts and we find resources with folks that we're engaging with. Because our idea is that we're not going to be gatekeepers around this. We see this as just a broad national movement to get as many schools as possible to be on board with Eid. And we're just trying to crowdsource all of this together in like a handful of places that folks have access to it. And then around social media tips and sample content, if folks do follow us on Empower, I think we put a lot of pride and energy into, being able to frame a narrative of Muslims organizing and being able to tell that story online across our platforms, Facebook, Instagram. I think now we're doing a little bit of TikToking, and then we'll make a plug for Mastodon that we're going to be working through next week. But it's really key to humanize the story, to tell the impact that it has on families and on students. And we really believe that it's about, like, we don't want our communities to be able to have to choose between their education, their religious identity, and practice. And so we've laid out some tips around telling that story. Visuals are always great, having a hashtag. And that's why we suggested this, Eid for All as a strong hashtag. And we've kind of laid out some suggested scripts or ideas around photo and video testimonials and some sample tweets. Everything that we're providing are suggested templates and ways to talk about the campaign, but it really will come down to what are the specifics to your political environment and your community environment. Some places may be a little bit more charged, like San Francisco, for instance, in terms of the opposition. Other places may be a shoo-in because of the legwork that had been done before. And I think Asad and Salima illustrated that quite well, that, getting that first campaign off may take a little while, but then the next meeting could be, one meeting, 100 families show up or 100 attendees, and then by the end of the meeting, there's a resolution that's made. So we really are trying to provide some evergreen, broad enough messaging and inspirational ideas for folks to kind of run with, and that we could support and, of course, help craft refined messaging as it sees fit. Because, at the end of the day, that's what Empowered, we spent a lot of our time doing, and we want to make sure that we're offering that. We have some graphics. I think we'll be adding some graphics as we draw inspiration from different artists and ideas that folks can use, and it should just be open for folks to be able to use. And then the last part of it, I think, Abdullah, we have some sample language around recruitment, how we talk about it, and even the petition. And Abdullah, maybe you could talk a bit about where this petition came from, because I think you may have been closely affiliated with it.
Yeah, so this is actually a current campaign that's happening right now with CUNY MSA, which is the City University of New York. They have a bunch of campuses all across New York State, and they're actually pushing for Eid to be recognized as a school holiday. I would say thousands of Muslims go to these schools and attend these universities, and whether it's at the undergrad level, master's level, or even getting their PhDs. And so it's really important that they're able to also get it recognized. And so this campaign doesn't only look on the elementary school level, but it keeps going, whether they're in high school, or even in college. People are still doing this campaign. And so specifically with this campaign, as it's going on right now, a lot of the language might seem either from last year to this year, but this is actually a change.org petition, and we actually linked it. And so when we look at this kind of language, we just want to take from it what's applicable within your cities. We know that it's not a copy paste or something that you could just take and put it within your city. It's going to be addressing different people. And so specifically here, they're calling on the chancellor. They're also calling on the chancellor and also the state assembly to get this passed, since the undergrad student government already passed it. And so there's different layers to this, and it's going to be different layers for each and every single one of you. And so identifying those layers, as we mentioned, I think in step 3, where we were talking about identifying your target, identifying who you're going to be addressing is actually extremely important to making your campaign successful. And so with that, and also really quickly at the end of it, I just noticed it's also talking about other campaigns that have already been successful. And that's really important when you talk about other allies that, for example, it's talking about Lunar New Year, Christmas, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. These are holidays that have already been passed. And so this is just the next step when they're including Eid al-Adha, inshallah.
And so that's the breadth of our toolkit. The one other thing that we'll offer up is that because Empower Change is a digital platform, we'd be more than happy to host your petition on our platform. And what that actually means is, one, we don't share any data except with the person that we're partnering with. This is something that Empower has been doing since we had started, and we want to make sure that folks have that opportunity. We know that different platforms have different terms of agreement, this, that, the other. For us, we just try to alleviate all the weeds. Our main idea is that we want the win. We want our communities to have the win. So whichever way that we can provide our resources and our tools to support, we can do that. And we recognize that some of our advocacy tools, the petition, targeted like phone calls, if that is what we want to do, or if there's going to be some opportunity to do some sort of video teleconferencing class, like we can figure that out if that's something within our wheelhouse to support. And so that's also what we want to be able to offer up. And so that was a toolkit link. Abdullah, I know we're gonna, I'll leave it to you on what the next section is. Cool.
Actually, you're just going to pass it to Cynthia. Yeah.
All right, so thank you all for hanging tight so far. So now we're kind of in the Q&A and open discussion section. You're welcome to use the Q&A feature in this chat, in the Zoom feature, and we can go over them and see if anyone has any questions. Oh, sorry, let me go back one slide. Oops.
So
No
I think
specific questions yet.
I saw a question coming in from Aya, but I also dropped it in the chat. Like, you know, they created the campaign for Washington State on change.org. Jazakallah khair for sharing it on the group, and to the extent that we can pile in and support, I do encourage people to sign on that if that feels appropriate for y'all. The one thing that I will mention, Aya, is that part of the campaigning that we believe in and our organizing model is making sure that you're organizing the folks that are going to be directly impacted on it, because that's actually where your target opposition will respond the most. Of course, you will also find elected officials, particularly if you're in a place like Los Angeles and Hollywood, where optics is important. Having 2,000 people sign on to a campaign to pressure an elected official definitely brings some sort of heat and pressure. But what we recognize in our power analysis and our organizing, that most elected officials or decision makers will respond when their constituents are the ones that are organizing and turning out numbers. And that's something that I just wanted to uplift through some of our organizing ethos.
Sounds great. I hope you all are feeling excited. If there are no further questions, we can hop straight into the poll if you would like. I think Ishraq is the one to unleash the poll.
Cool. So folks, feel free to add questions in the Q&A or drop comments in the chat as well. So I also sees the board I'm in contact with doesn't want to call it Eid because it has religious connotations. Any tips? We can certainly talk offline about that. But from what I would understand, if it's a public school district that recognizes other holidays, as well as, you know, as Abdullah had mentioned, I know New York City may be a different context. The East Coast may be a different context. But I would imagine that strength in numbers will be one way to actually challenge the board. And the key thing that we've learned, and I've learned in my organizing, is that if that board actually sees that, hey, there's like 100 families or whatever X amount of families that are asking this, then it's not going to be a question around religious connotations. It's going to be a question around what are the demands of the constituency that they're serving. But I'd also invite any other attendees to chime in on that as well. So the question was, so the board I'm in contact with doesn't want to call it Eid because it has religious connotations. So Salim, I'd also welcome you if you ran into that as a challenge in Pennsylvania, how folks had responded. Dr. Uzma, if that's something that you've ran into. And I know we had a sister from Virginia as well that had ran some campaigns. I'm not sure if she's still on the call. Dr. Uzma, I think I'm going to unmute you if that's actually easy. Or Salima, were you going to go? I'm going to give deference to Salima first, and then I'll open it up to Dr. Uzma.
That would be great. If you, I was just going to ask you to repeat the questioning here.
So I had mentioned the board that I am in contact with does not want to call it Eid because it has religious connotations. So on grounds of it being too religious.
Gotcha. So we had that. We definitely had that issue. It wasn't. They didn't directly say to us what you just mentioned about the name and the connotations, but they wanted to give us like this optional day off or like a floating day, you know, that you could use kind of for anything that you wanted to use it for. And we doubled down and we were really specific. We wanted Eid al-Fitr and Eid al-Adha to both be mentioned on the calendar, particularly in a city like Philadelphia that has like a really large Muslim population, over 150,000 students, over 300,000 Muslims just in the Philadelphia region. We thought it was a matter of fairness and all of the other things that we all would be campaigning on. So it was very, very specific that we wanted it to be mentioned that Eid is our holiday, and this is what we want to be acknowledged.
Jazakallah khair. And Dr. Uzma, I will unmute you to share your thoughts as well.
Let's see, unmute myself. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I have to say, just amazing, amazing pearls of wisdom shared there. I'm going to answer the question first. I agree with what Salima just had to say. I think it comes down to, again, being unapologetically Muslim, right? So the question comes from, why are they not willing to recognize Eid or call it Eid holidays? It's, is it rooted in a little bit of Islamophobia? It's possible. It could be, again, what's happening in that specific district. So I think it's really important that we do stick to the fact that we need the holiday recognized for what it is. And if the school doesn't feel comfortable, I mean, we just have to go back to the fact that, well, Christmas is a holiday, Easter is a holiday, you're making exceptions for one group, then, you kind of have to think broadly. We have lots of different groups that should be equally represented. So, we've had this challenge in different communities. We've been helping, the Eid Holiday Coalition has been helping districts throughout the country and making strides, just like all these amazing grassroots community activists here that we've been hearing from. But I think it's really important that we don't back down from that, the ask is specifically for Eid. And I think it comes with education. It's an opportunity to really educate the communities, whether it's the school community, the administrators, the faculty. I mean, you'll be surprised. There's a lot of people that work in schools that have not encountered Muslims, that do not know about Ramadan, that do not know about Eid. So this is our opportunity to really educate them. And the one last thing that I'll just say is, with all of the amazing information that was shared, I just want to put in my 2 cents that it's really important that we get involved as a community very early on. We have a huge ask, right? As Muslim Americans, we're asking for Eid. When we have a huge ask and we're coming to the table and we're coming with this huge request, but are we present? Are we really present? So, you have to make sure you're involved with the PTAs, you're involved with the districts, you're involved at the board level, run for school board, be present at the meetings, not only when you need something, but continue to be present after you get that ask, and make sure that you are visible in everything that you do in the community. And I think that goes a long way.
Jazakallah khair, and I appreciate, and I'm very excited to continue to work with you on this. Great. So Abdullah and Cynthia, I'm going to defer back to y'all on what the next step is, or what's happening next. Whole time. Okay. So now, as Dr. Uzma was also just mentioning, now it's like we are encouraging and inviting people to take action with us. So the first thing we're going to do, I know some folks had to drop off. We intended today's webinar was going to be 75 minutes. So we are going to be wrapping in about 10 minutes. But for folks that are still on the call, we definitely want to just know how many folks are actually excited to take action with us or take action in their community. And we are just along for the ride. We want us to be able to support. And that's fair. I see folks are saying, I'm seeing a lot of responses coming in. Folks are excited to get started. Some folks are maybes. No no's yet, which I think is great. And but it's completely fine if folks are not ready to take on this campaign. And I'll give it maybe another 30 seconds. There's a handful of people that haven't filled it out yet. Cool, one more additional person just did. But okay, and a few more folks. I was gonna drop in 5 seconds. Great, and again, this is just for us to at least generically gauge where folks are at. And I'm sharing just the results that most folks are excited to get started. And that the intent for today was sharing some success stories, sharing a very real campaign that's going on in San Francisco, indicating that this is difficult. It's not, I mean, it can turn out to be difficult, and it requires work, and it requires engagement and commitment. And so I'm excited and humbled to hear that most folks still want to move forward with this, the vast majority of folks. And the maybes, I'm hoping that our organizers will have a conversation with y'all and we'll find out what can convince y'all to go definitely take forward. So folks that are definitely excited to get started, I'm going to drop one more link in the chat right now. I know Abdullah just dropped the Mastodon thing, which we'll get to, but I'm going to drop, there's a form there that's a little bit more specific. For folks that are excited to get started, we already have your contact information. Part of our next steps and follow-up is that our team will be reaching out to y'all just to kind of get a sense of what's happening. But we have this form to get a little bit more information so we can get a head start before our conversation. We want to know where you're based, what district you're looking at. Are you already at a district that won and you're now looking to organize a neighboring district, or like, you know, your kid or your nephew or somebody in your family maybe in another district that you want to help get started? This is just a way for us to, you know, do our due diligence as organizers. So we encourage folks to jump off, to, you know, fill out the form. And that's another way for us to get in touch with y'all. And feel free to share this form with folks that may not have been able to attend this webinar, but they definitely want to launch an Eid for All, Eid School holiday campaign, and we'll be able to follow up with them. Salima, Jazakallah khair for actually joining us. It looks like you have hopped off. So those were our two kind of Eid related asks, and those are our next steps. So as I mentioned, next steps, there's a sign up form, the toolkit that's readily available. We dropped it in the link there. Our organizing team will be reaching out to y'all, especially for folks that are and interested. We want to know how we can get y'all started and how we can best support. And then at Empower, we're always grinding and we're always organizing and cooking different opportunities. So I'm going to defer to Cynthia or Abdullah to talk about what's happening a week from today or next Thursday.
Yeah, so we actually have a Mastodon training coming up, and Mastodon is going to be a Twitter alternative platform. People are already hopping onto it. There's a lot going on in Twitter, as many of you guys have been hearing, whether it's the layoffs or with that a billionaire is running it in their own way. And so we're going to actually be getting right into it. It's going to be a beginner guide. And so even if you know nothing about Mastodon, it's a great training to actually come on, find out more. I'm going to be there. The Empower team is going to be there. There's a lot of excitement around it. And so we actually want to invite you all to join us for that training. Once again, it's March 16th at 2 p.m. I dropped the link in the chat and you could actually sign up for it. And then you could also invite friends and family for whoever wants to join this Mastodon training. And so organizing is all interconnected. And so sometimes you're going to be seeing the same faces at some of our webinars, but it's also really great just for if you're getting into the organizing field to get like some of the best practices from other organizers, but to also stay connected with them, which is what we're going to be doing at Mastodon. And with that, let us jump. We did next steps and resources, and we're finally at the close. And it's actually really exciting, but also a little bit sad just because it's been such a great time with everyone here today. But the exciting part is so many of you guys are really excited about the next steps in our campaign, the Eid for All campaign. And so with that, you guys all have the sign-up form, the toolkit, and also my contact info is right there. And it's also, we're going to be sending a like the Zoom follow-up email, inshallah, which is also going to have some of these details for everyone. And so with that, Jazakumullah khairan everyone for joining us tonight. It was great going through all of this with you and hear from such amazing organizers and panelists that are working on this campaign. And so with that, subhanakallahumma bihamdik, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Thank you everyone for joining us. We look forward to seeing you guys either at the Mastodon webinar or staying connected with you guys for the Eid for All campaign. Assalamu alaikum.